So please welcome Mr. Hagan.
Thank you, Shane, for the kind introduction. Mr. Hagan. I haven't been called that for quite some time, if at all. So good to see everyone here today. Thanks for the invitation to come out. I think this is the first. Is it the first fundraising luncheon for men's health? Movember, in fact. So my first experience with Movember was back in 2008 when I coached at Parramatta, and I thought I'll give Movember a go, and I'd grow a moustache. That was my one and only contribution to Movember with the moustache. I contribute financially, but I looked hideous. So I admire and congratulate all men that are going to take that on this year and in future years. Well done. So today I thought we'd talk a little bit about my journey around prostate cancer, which is something I've been involved with for a long time. A little bit around the teams I've been involved with, which were talked about by Shane. But I thought first of all we'd best cover off on State of Origin last week, Steve.
Go, Harry.
How good was that? Isn't it funny? In the last, I think I've been in New South Wales longer than I lived in Queensland, by the way. But I've got a standing arrangement with a good mate of mine who I caught up with yesterday, a nice bottle of red wine for the winner. So I took that off him, a nice bottle of Shiraz, and a couple of lottery tickets during the week. Unexpected, but thankful nonetheless. And that's been part of that rivalry that we've all enjoyed and experienced. So what I find in Newcastle, because I've lived here for so long and I know a lot of people, when Queensland win Origin, I can't find anyone. I don't bump into anyone, there's no phone calls, there's no text messages. Amazing. But when New South Wales win, I seem to bump into everybody. So the last couple of years I've copped a little bit of stick for my trouble. But that's the beauty of Origin, and this year was, I think, a 40-year anniversary of Origin, and this actually says a bit about my age. I was actually at Lane Park as a 16-year-old, so you do the maths, watching from the outer, Arthur Beetson run onto the field to represent Queensland for the first time. And to give you some context around Origin, 1980 was the first time Queensland had won an Origin. When it started, Queensland hadn't won a series until 1960 before it started. So we were getting our ass kicked by New South Wales every year for 20 years. So hence why we're so passionate about Origin footy, because it actually gave us a chance to win the odd series now and again. So today's a bit around my journey with prostate cancer, and I guess to give you some background to my story is prostate cancer killed my old man Tommy. He was 73, that was back in 1992. I'm one of 4 boys. So the family history with prostate cancer is a huge factor. So of 4 boys, Bob, Max, Russell and myself, 3 of us have all been diagnosed with prostate cancer. So 2 brothers, Max and Bob, were diagnosed in their 60s. So the likelihood of me being diagnosed was, I think it was 14 times more likely than the normal population. So when I turned 40, and our GP, who was the Knights GP, Peter McGeek at the Knights, he recommended that for me, I'm getting an annual assessment by the urologist because of that family history. So every year would be PSA test, every year to be urologist. So it wasn't sort of a casual sort of mention. It was, listen, I'm booking you in for this every year. So I just went, okay, that's what we do. So for 4 years, I'd go along, PSA test, have a chat to Martin White. And it was no real shock to me when I was diagnosed at 44 because he'd been tipping me up all the way along. So while I'd probably prefer to be diagnosed in my 60s, the reality was I was 44. It was picked up at the earliest possible time. I didn't have any symptoms. I didn't have any real concerns. So it's just a reminder for family history, really important from 40, and for general population from 50. So in the room, I'm tipping there's a few men over 50. Would that be true? How many have had a PSA test in the last 12 months? Put your hand up. So we've got some work to do, haven't we, in the room? So I think the percentage of men getting checked was about 7% back in the 90s. I think it's now something like 40% in the 2020s. So we need to shift those numbers up a bit higher. And typically, men aren't good at getting organised. For whatever reason, we're not keen to get things checked or looked at in a whole range of ways. One of the positive things of being diagnosed is I don't have to have the other tests done anymore. So that's a real bonus for me. But for me, in my treatment and the assessment of my symptoms and what I needed to get done, if you're checked and diagnosed early, you can consider a lot more options. So my options at 44, because it was picked up early, were a lot better than if it's stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, then the options are very limited. So you've got to bear that in mind if you're thinking about having that stuff checked out. So it's, again, one about awareness today, and I guess we've ran a campaign, the HPCA, in September. Not sure if you would have heard or seen some of the media around that. It was all about the little prick. Just so happened to be, I was involved. I'm not sure exactly why, but courtesy of all the local media, Newcastle Herald and Maitland Mercury, I think even today, there's a little banner ad there which has allowed everybody to understand, and they probably haven't done it for a number of years, to be honest, and we just need those annual reminders to go and get it done. So this morning on my walk around Warners Bay, I feel like I'm some sort of expert on prostate cancer now. A gentleman about maybe 64 grabbed me literally and said, "Hey, listen, mate, could I have a chat to you? I've had my PSA done and I've been diagnosed. What can I expect? What's the experience going to be?" So at least I think men are now happy to talk a bit more openly about that type of stuff, and it is a bit daunting. I had two mates last year, one of which was Trevor Gilmeister, who was a legendary Queensland Rugby League player. He was diagnosed last year at 54 or 55, and another good mate of mine at Caves Beach around the same age. So it doesn't discriminate too much on your health or your fitness. It's pretty much something you just need to keep an eye on. So that's my little sermon for the day on prostate cancer. I know that we've got another couple of people to speak around mental health and other things that we need to consider, but I guess for me, I'm a fairly passionate advocate for having been through it, and given my profile in the Newcastle Hunter Valley community, I think it's only right that I add a bit of support to that. So look after your health and go and get yourself checked out. The wives and the girlfriends can also play an active role in that, because they're probably better at getting men organised than we are ourselves, so give them a poke along. The other part of today was a little bit around the career that I've been fortunate enough to have, and the number of people or teams that I've been experienced or been lucky enough to be around. So one of my great skills in life has been being in the right place at the right time. And I've had a fair amount of luck along the way. And I was thinking about it this morning. I think I've been involved with rugby league on a weekly basis officially for 50 years. So my career started at 6 years of age in Brisbane for a team called West Mitchelton, where I played all my junior footy until 17. I left at 17 to go to Sydney to play with Canterbury. Spent maybe 6 years there, came to Newcastle. So my involvement in footy has been 50 years. So I'm now part of the Triple M footy call team, and I think we've been doing that now for maybe 10 years, perhaps. So I feel quite fortunate and blessed that I'm still involved. Hopefully next year we get to go and watch again and talk about footy. I think someone touched on my role with Mal Meninga and the Kangaroos this year. We're not going anywhere. So that was a bit of so we've been going somewhere for the last 4 years. We've been to England, we've been on the World Cup around Australia. Last year with New Zealand, I think we played New Zealand and Tonga last year. So it's like my paid holiday every year. I get 4 or 5 or 6 weeks of footy. And that's what my daughters, they reckon it's just a holiday. And they're probably right. So again, I've got to work alongside Mal Meninga and some of the best players that the game can produce at the moment. People like Cameron Smith, we've worked alongside him with the Queensland team, and he's still possibly playing again next year at 37. So I'm not sure if he's quite ready to pull the pin yet. But if I think about the involvement I've had in footy and around the successful teams I've been in. If I think back to the Canterbury days, I was like 18, 19, 20 playing in a team alongside Steve Mortimer, Terry Lamb, Paul Langmack, Peter Tunks, Peter Kelly, all these guys that were, Origin and Test level guys, and I was 19 or 20 learning the trade. Warren Ryan was the coach back then, who was a highly successful footy coach back then, and very much from the old school. So you sort of got that direct feedback, and you knew exactly where you stood every week in terms of your performance and your position and what was expected of you. So I guess the thing that's changed over those 30 years is maybe the feedback has softened a little bit in terms of how you deliver the messaging, and you maybe can't be quite as direct with your feedback to players and maybe what they need to fix up and what they need to improve. So that's certainly changed for the better, I think, over time. And if I think about my coaching career, which finished probably over 10 years ago now, at Parramatta, I think 2008, and I'll talk about why that maybe ended in a minute. I actually haven't got cranky or lost my temper with anybody for the last 12 years. So there's got to be something said for not coaching anymore. Every week, that pressure cooker that you're in, and the pressure seemed to come on, and you just sort of couldn't, you talk about mental health, and I think I was bipolar every time we got beaten. You'd take those scars with you for a couple of weeks, and you'd really suffer from all that. So even my role now in the assistant coaching role, the dialogue and the conversations in the coaching box with Mal are like they are now. There's no real venom or there's no real heat coming out. It's just a very normal conversation. So you're seeing guys like Craig Bellamy in the grand final, and I think maybe even Adam O'Brien this year at times for the Knights, where they're absolutely busting their valves in that coaching box. And I often think about how that translates. So whatever Craig's saying in that box to the bloke on the headsets, for it to get down to the sideline, to get to the runner, to go onto the field to talk to Cameron, how that messaging would change. So you think about what he's saying. So Mel and I talk about this all the time. Whatever happened on that field then, by the time we have that conversation and we try and get a message down, that's all done and dusted. We're another 3 minutes on from that. So you've got to try and coach a bit with what's in front, not going backwards all the time. So it's an interesting conversation, because I guess we all watch the footy, we all see the coaches, we all get agitated by what's going on the field. But you've got to, I guess, think about what is it you can actually do or say that can help these poor buggers in the next 5 minutes or 10 minutes or half time. And I guess the greatest example was Origin in the last couple of weeks in Adelaide, where Queensland were down by 10 points. And Phil Gould touched on the fact that Wayne Bennett's been in these situations so often. And what would Wayne Bennett say, and how would he get the ship to turn around? And pretty simply, I guess, if I think about all the good coaches that I've been coached by, that I've worked with, it's all very simple. It's very small messaging, it's very simple instructions, nothing complicated. And Wayne Bennett has coached that way for 30 years. I'm tipping Craig Bellamy's coached that way for 15 or 20 years. I know for a fact Mal Meninga coaches that way. So everything's simple. The team understands what the plan is normally, so it's not complicated. And, we're fortunate that we've worked with, Cameron Smith, Cooper Cronk, Jonathan Thurston, those type of players for the last 10 years, where they're all pretty intelligent guys. They know what's important in footy, and they know how to go out and execute the game plan. So I guess if I put it in the context of teams or work, so even the Triple M footy call team that I'm part of, Frankie Barrett, Mark Glanville, Matt Rodwell, and we've got a producer, JR, who's fantastic. So we're a little team that we all work together every weekend, and we try and have a lot of fun, and we try and be coherent for 80 minutes, I guess. But we've worked together as a team now for maybe 4 or 5 years. So you would like to think over 4 or 5 years, we all actually get better at what we do, and we can actually work together, and we all sort of understand our strengths and weaknesses. Sadly, Frankie Barrett, who's been part of that team, he'll have to give up that role next year because he's going to be the media manager for the Knights on a full-time basis. So if there's any aspiring play-by-play callers in the room, put your hand up. We're looking for a new person to do that job. So in the end, for most teams, and you're all in business and working in different areas, the key message for Mal and or Wayne is getting the right people in the right positions, making sure we all understand the plan. It's pretty simple. And the thing that Mal Meninga would often talk about, you hear a lot about game plans in footy. Do they follow the game plan and this and that? So Mal's approach to footy is very simple. It doesn't matter what the plan is, as long as we all believe in it. So if you think about Queensland and how they go about their footy, that team that won last week had unbelievable belief in itself, even though no one else around footy probably gave them much of a chance. So it's a fairly simple approach, but if you've got a simple plan, everyone's committed to it, and everyone believes in it, more than likely you might get some success. So that's, I guess, a very simple snapshot on teams and what's important. The last thing I thought I'd do today is just mention a couple of the characters that I've sort of been involved with, and maybe a couple of guys that everyone probably knows in this room, and a couple of guys that I've had a bit to do with over time. One is Andrew Johns, who's going to be talked about. He's an immortal. He's going to be talked about as one of the great players in our game's history. I think he's in the team of the century in the Kangaroos. Dally M medal winner, Kangaroo tourist, won plenty of origins as a player, played in 2 premierships for the Knights, so he's going to be revered as one of the great players of all time. But I thought I'd share this one with you, where Andrew Johns played back in 2001 at the old Marathon Stadium. It was a Sunday afternoon, really hot. It was like 32 degrees, sort of maybe not quite winter, but early in the year. And we're playing Balmain, and we're behind at half-time by about 8 or 10 points. And Joey had done everything in his power in the first half to try and get the team organised. So at half-time, you could see he was fatigued. So he was in the dressing room. It's only a little old dressing room, like a little U-shape. And he was really distressed. So the medical team had the oxyviver on him to get him recovered, to get some oxygen back into his system, to see if he could go out in the second half and play at the standard that we all expect. So sure enough, Andrew John goes out in the second half, scores 2 tries, sets 2 tries up, kicks 4 from 4. We beat them on the day, the Tigers. What a great victory. Unbelievable. Crowd goes home happy, all the fans on the hill. Next week, we're playing Cronulla, Sunday afternoon, hot day, very similar. Before the game, we have a team meeting. In the team meeting, they're sort of huddled in there and they file in, and I'm at the front of the room. And I look over to my left, Adam McDougall, who's in the team, who's taken note of last weekend, Andrew Johns, with the oxyviver. This is before we do the warm-up. Dude has got the oxyviver on in the team meeting. I thought, geez, this is weird. Anyway, I thought, oh, whatever. So Joey Johns, who's the captain, says, "Coach, could I say something?" I said, "Of course you can, you're the captain." He said, "I didn't know we had Christopher Skase playing with us today." Anyway, Joey went out again. They killed him, had another victory. So we had a couple of characters in the team, Joey and Duke certainly, and they've now gone on to do great things. Manshake. What about the Manshake? Amazing. And the last guy that I wanted to touch on was Mark Hughes, who's done fantastic work with the Mark Hughes Foundation, going through his own battles with health. Won 2 premierships with the Knights. Local boy from Curry, I guess. I had the opportunity to coach Hughesy, for a couple of years, and we used to train at the old university, which used to back onto the railway line there at Warrabrook, if you think back. So back then we were at training this one afternoon, and the coal trains would go past as we're sort of training and this and that. And I had to talk to Hughesy about the game coming up. It was actually Brisbane Broncos, and he was marking up on Justin Hodges, who's playing right centre, and Mark Hughes is playing left centre. So we're talking a bit about Hodges' right foot step back to the inside, or he can skip to the outside, left-hand fend, give him a bit of detail around what he can do, what he can offer. So we went through the defensive role for Mark, and then we talked about his role with the footy. I want you to hit that hole on the inside of Justin Hodges and get Joey to hit you, short and hard, and I want you to hit the line hard, or maybe skip to the outside and find a pass for someone. So we're going through a bit of coach sort of player stuff. And went for about 3 or 4 minutes, and at the end I said, "Hey Hughesy, do you know where I'm coming from, mate? We've talked about this." He said, "Hags, did you know there's 347 carriages just on that train that just went past?" I said, "No worries, mate, have a good game on the weekend." That's I might have embellished that a little bit. And the last thing I thought I'd talk about is why I gave up coaching. And that's, you know, sometimes you think you're in the wrong role, in the wrong position, and maybe you're speaking different language. So we had a game in 2008, which is the year I retired, and I made this decision in that year that maybe coaching is not my thing. Maybe I need to consider other career moves. And it went like this. Eric Growth Jr., who was our right winger. You remember Eric Growth Jr.? Fantastic, athletic, big, could run the footy like no other, could trample little blokes, but defence wasn't his strong suit, if you recall back. He had a little bit of a weakness in that he would leave his wing and come in field a little bit, maybe sometimes too often. So we had our team meeting in our field session the day before we played Brisbane in a Monday night game, Suncorp Stadium. They had a left winger called Denning Kemp, super quick and playing outside Lockyer and Berrigan and these sort of guys, so he was a real strength for them. So Eric Growth, in our team meeting, I said, hey, listen, Eric, 2 things you need to think about tomorrow night is Denning Kemp, really quick, so what you need to do is stay on the chalk. You know the sideline? Everyone knows the sideline, don't you? Stay on the chalk, whatever you do, don't come in off your wing, whatever you do. I say, you right with that, mate? He says, yes, Hags, I'm all over it. I say, good. Go to training, we have a bit of left on right. First one, half pace, Eric comes flying in off the wing and the left team for scores the try to start training. I said, Eric, stop doing that. We talked about this. Yes, coach, I've got it, it's okay. Following night, we played Brisbane, Suncorp Stadium. Denning Kemp scored 4 tries. Eric came off his wing on 4 occasions. And the last one was in the corner on the bell for Brisbane to win the game. So that was the moment I knew that coaching wasn't for me anymore. And when we filed into the dressing rooms, Brett Finch was in the team, another character at Parramatta at that time, and someone that I've known since he was 7 or 8 years old. Finchy sort of filed in off the field about player 4, you know, and like dejected because we've lost the game on the death, you know, by 2 points, whatever. And I've come in from the other side at Suncorp in the other door. And Brett looked at me and I looked at him like fairly romantically, sort of in a weird way. And he said to me, F him off, as in Eric. I said, I'm hearing you, brother. So there was no more Eric that year. And there was no more coaching for me. I retired. I thought, this is not for me. So on that note, I wish you a good afternoon. Great to see you all and enjoy your afternoon here.